Good morning. Welcome to Five Clubs here on Golf Channel. You can also listen. That is PGA Tour Radio's Channel 92 on Sirius XM. I am Gary Williams, and this program is always brought to you by Century Insurance, right by you. Their connection to the game of golf runs deep with their relationship with the USGA and the First Tee. Of course, Golf Pride. When it comes to grips, at every level, more players trust Golf Pride because of the materials and the options they have than any other grip company in the world. Peter Millar, everything that I have worn proudly for 15 years because they have refined performance, luxury, and style for almost 25 years. And of course, Pinehurst, the cradle of American golf, there is always something new, which means there's always a great reason to be booking a trip to go to the cradle of American golf. We've got a lot to get to on this Monday, but it's August 4th, and we are 7 months into not only the year, but 7 months in to this program. And one thing that I do not presume ever is that anybody knows that we reside here. And we'd like to believe that over time, people are starting to understand that you can count on us Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday morning. But we thought it would be reasonable. Regular season of the PGA Tour is over. The major championship season for men and women, by virtue of what happened yesterday at the AIG Women's Open, it's over as well. That we would do just a little like 90-second reset. If you're waking up wherever you might be, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or somewhere in New England, who knows? Maybe you're down in the low country of South Carolina, you're going, what's that? Who are they? What are they doing? Well, what we intend to do here, as we started here on January 6th at Five Clubs, is provide enough over the course of time for everybody who cares about the game of golf, the industry of golf, the game of golf, not just recapping professional golf, of which we lean into certainly here on this program. And for me to be here, to have the team around me, the production team that you don't see, the management team with Signature Sports Group, starting with Steve Hall, and then with all of our contributors, Johnson Wagner, Brendan DeYoung, Gil Hance, Emma Carpenter, not to mention Gabby Herzig and Cole Hammer and Jaime Diaz, and who am I forgetting? I maybe have left somebody out. I don't believe that I have. We want you to believe that over the course of 7, 8 months, and by the end of the year, gosh, they talk about everything in the game of golf. And it's not just what we talk about, it's what you hear, what you see. That music to start the show, and people have said to me, what is that? Well, it's music that my cousin, who's an Emmy Award-winning musical composer in California, did for this program, that it's a variety show and that there's a variety of topics that you're going to be able to listen to. And this artwork over my shoulder and around this studio, the photographs, not only some that I've taken, but Dave Basden's artwork, Wendy Billis, the more talented Billis, much more talented than her husband, Jay. She has a piece of art in this studio. Chandler Worthington, his great art is in this studio as well, not to mention photographers like Larry Lambrecht and all the places that I have been lucky enough to travel to in my time loving the game of golf, not just covering it, photographs and head covers and putter covers. All of those things are what we would like you to believe is what Five Clubs is. So that is a 90-second, maybe 2 minutes. I always go over here on this program. That's why we need more time here on Five Clubs. All right, let's get to what we're going to do today. I mentioned Gabby Herzig, great writer from The Athletic. She has been a little bit on hiatus in terms of her contributing here on this program because she's been taking a little time. And the person she took a little time with is a good friend of hers, Claire Rogers. They're both going to join me at the bottom of the hour. Obviously, Gabby, who writes for The Athletic, Claire writes for Golf Magazine, contributes at golf.com, has a terrific series called The Scoop. There are very few people who are not important in the game of golf that she's not sat down with to have a scoop of ice cream. They stayed on beyond the Open Championship to explore the country of Ireland. We'll talk about that and also kind of where we sit as we reset for the playoffs. And speaking of which, let's get to what transpired yesterday so that we now know who is in those FedEx Cup playoffs on the PGA Tour, because the Wyndham Championship concluded yesterday and we had a guy who broke through that vortex for the first time. Cameron Young, not only does he win, he wins emphatically. Mac Meisner, what a Hail Mary. Are you kidding? This guy was hovering right around 160 in the FedEx Cup standings 2 weeks ago. Today, he's employed. He's not in the playoffs, but I'm not going to say he's saying who cares, but who cares? He's got a job for 2026. Mark Hubbard shot 63 on Sunday, and for a moment, I don't know how much or how long that moment was. I think he felt like he knew he needed to make the putt on the 18th hole. Still, great Sunday for him. Alex Noren, who's had some moments in the state of North Carolina. How about what he did at the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow? He finishes in a tie for third. Jackson Coyven, speaking of North Carolina, he has lived in Chapel Hill for the last 5 years. His parents relocated from California. He's still playing college golf at Auburn. Tied for fifth, Chris Kirk, who also was well outside the playoff picture just a couple of weeks ago. He missed the cut at Memorial, and since then he's been plowing the field. He will be in Memphis. Aaron Rai, the defending champion, a very good defense of that title, finishes in fifth. And then Matt McCarty, Patrick Fishburne, Matt Fitzpatrick. And Matt Fitzpatrick is doing all the things that you need to do if you want to make that final impression on your Ryder Cup captain. And my expectation is that he is going to be on that team. That, by the way, is going to be a big topic of conversation on this program and all the programs that talk about golf at the elite level, because the Ryder Cup now becomes much more into focus because these teams are on the precipice of being determined quantitatively and then by the filling out of the rosters by the captains Keegan Bradley and Luke Donald. But let's talk a little bit about Cameron Young. Cameron Young is somebody who is, I think, another example of kind of what we do in sports. If you're really, really close for a period of time, and then you're not particularly close for another period of time, we kind of move on. I'm not saying people out and out moved on from Cameron Young, but when you have a lull or a little bit of an ebb, you go, and incidentally, Cameron Young is somebody who at times, and there's nothing wrong with it, he's got to be who he is, can be a little dour on the golf course. And you're looking at him, you're going, are you enjoying this? The truth is, I'm sure at times a lot of those guys don't necessarily enjoy what they're doing because it's hard. But they've chosen this path, and he chose it at a very, very young age. His father, David, longtime golf professional at one of the really special places to see and play golf, and that's at Sleepy Hollow that looks out over the Hudson, a golf course that has been restored over the last decade or so by one of our contributors here, Gil Hance. It's one of the special places to play golf, and Cameron Young literally grew up there. There are a couple of buildings on that property, a property that was constructed by Cornelius Vanderbilt, who had a few shekels himself, and that was their home. And then it became one of the really special places where golf was played. So he grows up there. His dad's the golf professional. He heads off. He goes to Fordham Prep, which is not exactly the mean streets of going to high school. And then he goes off to Wake Forest to play at one of the great programs in America. And he's around other great, talented players. And he makes his way onto the PGA Tour. And almost immediately, he's in the deep end of the pool. And I'm talking about a PGA championship coming down the stretch at Southern Hills. I'm talking about being right there at the bitter end at the old course, at the Open Championship. And you're going, oh, God, this guy, not only is he going to win, he's going to win a lot, he's going to win immediately. And then he didn't. And then you start to examine him and you're going, well, what are the frailties? What are the faults? What are the ailments that are going to prevent him from being a big, big winner? They all have some, with the exception of very few. And his, in particular, was his putter. And in a year in which one of the things that he's been better than anybody at, and he's not, his greatest weapon is his driver, has been the putter. But over the last season, meaning this season, Cameron Young has become one of the better putters in the world. You know how damn hard that is to do that? To plow your way statistically from the back end of the bus to the front. And he's done that. And he did it over the course of the 4 days in addition to doing everything else exceptionally well. So he goes from a guy who's been the most notable bridesmaid that we've had in professional golf for the last 3 or 4 years to a guy who now not only breaks through the vortex, he does it emphatically, and he too submits his name. Onto that table, scattered about, is a bunch of names with a bunch of data associated with a bunch of players who would like to play at Bethpage. The most important thing that Cameron Young did this week was win a golf tournament. But beyond that, what he did was improve his position in the FedEx Cup standings and obviously improve his position in the mind of Keegan Bradley. What's interesting about what Keegan Bradley has in front of him is he going to pass himself over now over the next couple of weeks based on his own performance, because it appeared when he won the Travelers that it was without question he was going to be a playing captain. And now he's got the likes of Chris Gotterup, who hadn't done anything for any of us to even consider him. Chris Gotterup happened after Keegan Bradley won the Travelers. Cameron Young, for all intents and purposes, has happened after Keegan Bradley won the Travelers. And oh, by the way, those two guys are from the greater tri-state area. Cameron Young from, right there on the Hudson River, Fordham Prep, and Chris Gotterup from the great state of New Jersey. That's right, Monmouth County specifically. So these two guys who are from that area, and you're going, put those two guys into the pool because they'll respond well. We don't know whether they will or they won't. One thing I will say lastly about Cameron Young, if you go back to the President's Cup, which doesn't get as much attention as the Ryder Cup, when it was played right here at Quail Hollow, he had started to do all the things that I just mentioned, specifically what he did at the PGA Championship and then at the Open Championship, and you're going, wow, this guy, 22, 23, and the President's Cup was here in 2022. Every player was saying emphatically, I want to play with that guy because he is such a superior ball striker. This has gotten more interesting for Keegan Bradley. Last thing I will say, and this is on the other side of it, what's not interesting, and this is one of the things that as we look at the new boss for the PGA Tour, and how do you eradicate something that's not interesting, that is spending meaning a big sponsor. Comcast, the Comcast Business Top 10. You familiar with it? If you're watching this program, you probably are because you are knee-deep in golf. At the end of the regular season, 10 players gain a ton of cash. And with the restructuring of the FedEx Cup bonus pool, in addition to that Comcast Business Top 10, there was a ton of cash paid out yesterday to a bunch of guys who were not in Greensboro, North Carolina, starting with Scottie Scheffler. Scottie Scheffler has not hit a shot in several weeks, and I'm not saying he should have been in Greensboro. But he made $18 million officially when the tournament was over yesterday. And by the way, he's going to add another $5 million in 2 weeks because he's guaranteed to be in that number one spot because of how good he's been all year after the BMW Championship. So $23 million. But specifically, this Comcast Business Top 10. I applaud Comcast for investing in golf. I say that to everybody who does it. Thanks. Thanks for making the choice of turning what you like to believe is, semantically, you could call it a cost center, you could call it investment, call it whatever you want. Are you getting what you want out of it? Because what transpired yesterday was not talked about. And I get what's most important is who is getting into the playoffs. But what shouldn't be lost altogether is a bunch of guys making millions and millions and millions of dollars, and it's never discussed. So how do you make the end of your regular season more interesting? It's not easy. Because if you look at all the other sports, the National Football League, Major League Baseball, the NBA is the last couple of days of the season, my God, load management. It's load management palooza all year long, and then it culminates at the end of the year where nobody's playing. And you're lucky in the NFL if the final regular season weekend includes any teams that have not already secured a wild card berth. I understand that's not easy, but I'd like to believe the PGA Tour is going to examine very closely if we're going to have businesses invest millions of dollars into culminating something at the end of the regular season. Don't we want people to talk about it and for it to have some volatility and some turbulence to it where some people can move in and move out? There were two players who finished in that top 10 who were even in Greensboro, Ben Griffin and Keegan Bradley. There's got to be a way to maybe incentivize, not easy to do at this present time, with top players making as much as franchise quarterbacks in the National Football League, but I'd like to believe it'll be looked at. All right, that was the regular season. When we come back, the major championship season, a bow put on it yesterday at the AIG Women's Open at delightful, charming, and beautiful Royal Porthcawl. What a spectacular setting that was, a great performance. There was a trend on the women's side of the major championship season. There was also a trend that continued with one caveat on the men's side. We'll take a look at that. As I mentioned, Claire Rogers, Gabby Herzig, friends, peers, colleagues, so to speak, together with me to look back on a lot of things that have happened, including their own journey after the final men's major, and some other items to get to, because while we transition to the playoffs in men's professional golf, this is the biggest fortnight in amateur golf starting this week. And there was also a huge winner that was crowned last week as well on the amateur side, and what I believe is the ultimate gauntlet, in addition to winning the amateur championships, women's this week, men's next week, both on the West Coast. We'll take a look at that as well. It's a Monday. It's Golf Channel. It's also Channel 92 on Sirius XM's PGA Tour Radio. Great to have you with us on this Monday. Back with you right after this. Welcome back in this Monday edition of 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel, and of course Channel 92 Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio. This segment is brought to you by Golf Pride. Lucky to be partnered with these amazing North Carolina-based companies. Golf Pride, they have a design studio right there at their headquarters, which is at the entrance to Pinehurst number 8. Another great partner of ours. So if you're in that area, swing in there. You won't believe it. What I know to believe is that they are the best at what they do. They have more offerings. They have the best materials. I'm looking forward to gripping the club in Scotland on Saturday with those new Align Max grips. Now, Scotland was not a home for a major championship in the women's game this year. That is where it concluded yesterday in Wales at Royal Porthcawl. And when you look back now on the major championship season, we say this at the beginning of the year, that the bold type on players' resumes are those victories. Those are the wins, that it's not just footnotes, even though we know that Cameron Young became the 1,000th unique winner, meaning the way that they're determining it. And look, the PGA Tour, I appreciate the clever efforts to make him the 1,000th, and Willie Park was number 1, and that has opened up a cavalcade of jokes about Willie Park and what kind of courtesy car he was driving in 1860 to Prestwick when he was the first winner on the PGA Tour. But the major championship season stands by itself, and the women's game has 5 major championships. I'm not a huge fan of the 5 majors, but it is what it is. And as we look at these winners, there's one particular trend that is not only about where they sit in terms of the world ranking. The highest ranked winner at the time that they won was actually the young lady who's a rookie on the LPGA this year, Maya Yamashita. She's 15th, was 15th in the Rolex rankings. Mao Saigu, Maya Stark, Minjee Lee. Minjee Lee, who's now won 3 different major championships, she was 24th when she won that KPMG Women's PGA Championship. Grace Kim's win, the manner in which she won, above all of the major championship winners, the most dramatic, the most insane, which also amplifies how precarious, how precious, how hard it is to do any of this. If you look at the winners, Saigo was 37th in the world when she won, Maya Stark 35th, Minjee Lee 24th, Grace Kim 96th, and also Yamashita 15th. If you look at those women, 4 of the 5, Minjee Lee, as I just mentioned, has now won 3 different majors, and there's reason to believe that she could win all 5. Very reasonable. 4 different first-time major champions, which is something that I listened to Minjee Lee talk about when she was expressing her how impressed she was playing with Lottie Woad over the weekend, and saying they're all the same. They're all precocious, and they all have this unwavering belief that I belong here, not to just kind of be wallpaper and be a part of this competition, But don't think that I don't think that I can't win this. So if you look at the women's game, they've always been, at least really since Sayri Pak started what became a global phenomenon, particularly seeing the development and the growth and the dominance of women from the Asia-Pacific Rim. And then you've seen, obviously, the emergence of players back here in the United States, and in particular Nelly Korda, who, by the way, woke up this morning as not the #1 ranked player in the world. 71 weeks, hell of a run. She had one of the great seasons that we've seen last year, winning as often as she did. She's not won this year, which is, again, a story on top of the major championship winners this year. But the women's game is more global. The LPGA goes to more places, more countries, is represented by more overall global depth than the men's game. And they are seeing not only youth, but here's the thing about Maya Yamashita. She's had already won 13 times on the Japan LPGA. And you can question how good the talent is. I understand the best talent, the best tour is the LPGA, and most, if not all of those players from all over the world, wherever it may be, the Korean LPGA, the Japan LPGA, eventually have aspirations and certainly the belief that they belong and should be playing on the LPGA. But 13 wins is the thing we also speak about most often, that it is the most elusive, most refined skill that any player can have. So whatever the talent pool is, and however deep or shallow it might be, when you put yourself in that position more often than anybody else, and you emerge more often than anybody, did you think she looked uncomfortable or discomforted by the environment she was in over the last 36 holes? Because she didn't go on a flyer over the weekend and jump up and win. No, she went off last and then went off last again. And she didn't bobble at all. That is what getting yourself in position to do what she did yesterday, before she did what she did yesterday, does for you. It makes things that can get very, very fast stay relatively slow. Very impressive. And again, that was the capsule and the profile of the women's major championship winners in 2025. Now, on the men's side, with the exception of J.J. Spaun, who jumped up and won that U.S. Open at Oakmont, we're on a heck of a run in terms of pedigree, in terms of established stars, in terms of multi-time major championship winners, going all the way back to the beginning of last year, and who won the Masters, which we could add that picture of Scottie Scheffler, and then subsequently was Xander Schauffele breaking through, winning 2 majors. And obviously with what we had at the end of the major championship season last year, and it was Xander again, making him a multi-time major championship winner. The guy on the left, Rory McIroy, now has 5. The guy that is next to him, that was his 3rd. J.J. Spaun, obviously his 1st. Now Scheffler has 4th. J.J. Spaun, if J.J. Spaun 2-putted at Oakmont, I think that I'm not saying any major gets lost, but it would have been back page kind of feeling compared to the other 3 major championships, because in time, whether it be 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, Rory's win and the exhausting nature of how he got across the line in that playoff over Justin Rose, that's the one that will stand up. But what will also stand up is what I believe is what we're living through right now, and that is the major championship window, which is currently wide open for Scottie Scheffler. So that's a quick little brush on a brush by of the major championship season for the men and women. When we continue here, I'll be joined by 2 people who are going to give me more perspective on not only the last men's major, because they covered it for their employers, Claire Rogers for Golf Magazine, golf.com, and of course, Gabby Herzig, who we're lucky enough to have contributing here on 5 Clubs, but also her writing for The Athletic. Their perspective on what they witnessed, what it all means going forward, and also some thoughts on the playoffs and Keegan Bradley and the Ryder Cup and their extended stay in Ireland. Great to have you with us this Monday edition here of 5 Clubs. It's Golf Channel. It's Sirius XM. We are very lucky and proud to be simulcast on both. We're back with those 2 right after this. Back in on 5 Clubs. Probably need to update that Open since she's added 1,000 images to her golf catalog. We'll get to her in just a minute. It's great to have you with us here on 5 Clubs on a Monday, Golf Channel, and also Sirius XM's Channel 92 PGA Tour Radio. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar. The fall line is arriving at petermillar.com. The new shoes that I was lucky enough to get last week, I'm wearing them right now, the Odeons. Don't doubt that they have them on. I'm going to throw them up on the desk because I have the flexibility to do it. Those are among the many things you can get now at petermillar.com. You saw her open. Lucky enough to have her contributing here, but she does most of her work, the lion's share, at The Athletic. She is joined this morning by friend and peer covering the game of golf from Golf Magazine, golf.com. I'm speaking of Gabby Herzig and Claire Rogers. Ladies, good morning. It's great to have you both. How you both feeling? Acclimated back in the States?
We're good. We're back. We're so happy to be back home, but also just reminiscing on an amazing trip in Ireland.
Well, we're going to get to the trip. We've got images to support. We've got videos. We've got Claire doing something she's apparently never done before. That's a tease for a little bit later on in this segment. Gabby, let me start with you because the last thing that you guys did professionally together was cover the Open Championship. And Scottie Scheffler not only won, he did it emphatically again in another major, but he also did it after sharing this level of introspection that continues to drive dialogue beyond the bounds of golf. We now have Tom Brady weighing in on balancing professional life and personal ambition and all fatherhood and all that stuff. How do you think Scheffler's persona has been altered this year by everything?
You know, I think Scottie Scheffler's persona has been altered just because of the increased exposure on Scottie Scheffler. The more he stays dominant, the more he wins, the more creative questions we have to think of to, crack him open a little bit. But really the most revealing thing I thought about that came out about Scottie Scheffler this year was, everything he spoke about in that 5-minute viral clip, I think we knew about Scottie Scheffler, but to hear him actually say it, to really explain how his identity is not intertwined with who he is as a golfer, it's more who he is as a man, who he is as a father, that actually told us so much more about how well Scottie has been able to perform and how he's been able to make those results come about over the last 2-3 years. When your identity isn't attached to your results, to your performance on the course, the stakes aren't as high for when you do come up short, for when you don't perform to the standards that you want to. And I think the times that Scottie Scheffler has come up short, has failed in his book, which would be a top 10 or a top 15, he's learned about himself. He hasn't put that added pressure on himself to perform. It's so interesting to see how someone's at-home personality impacts their ability to succeed on the course. And I think that's what we've learned most about Scottie Scheffler this year, especially with that amazing clip that keeps getting played over and over again.
It really does. Shane Ryan, the latest to try to explain to Tom Brady what it is that Scottie was trying to say. Claire, for you, one of the things you do is you have these fun but also very revealing conversations with your platform called The Scoop. So you have these long conversations with people and people learn stuff about them. And what Gabby just said, I think, is absolutely true. People who covered Scottie Scheffler were not particularly surprised by anything he said. It's people who were not quite as familiar, whether it's people who cover other sports or other athletes. What's your feeling about his ability to drive conversation beyond the lane that we're all in, which is golf?
Yeah, I think Gabby hit, the nail on the head there. I think people who took that as a negative thing about Scottie totally kind of misunderstood it. But I do like that, also his caddy, Ted Scott, he does his Sunday sermon every week. Golf is not, obviously he's the number one in the world, but there's so much other stuff going on with him. Every week there's conversations about his cute son, Bennett, being on the road with him, being right there when he gets the trophy. He's got Meredith there with him and his whole team. And it's a very wholesome thing, I think, to experience, both being on site there and even people who are just watching it on TV. You feel like you get to know his family a little bit, his team a little bit. And I think that's why people like athletes as well, when you know more about them as a person.
Claire, right back to you about Rory. We've known much more about him. People have always declared him to be interesting, the way he plays, the way he shares. Did Portrush in some ways, do you think, and I use the term right-size somebody, like in terms of really believing like you've got your equilibrium back in total, returning there after what happened in 19, returning there after what has been kind of a weird summer. Do you think Portrush was the elixir that Rory needed?
I think so. I think that there's nothing like going home, right, for anyone. And for him to, especially being on site, the amount of support he had all week, I don't know if there was a way that he wouldn't feel like $1 million when he was there. But after winning the Masters, I think, it put a bow on all that he had done this year. And to just, do it in a place that he knows very well, I think made it mean a lot more.
Gabby, it's funny that Claire said there's nothing like home. She's right, but home can be complicated. That's why there's more movies like done about going home and going to reunions and being around your family. And it's like, oh God, I hate this uncle. I hate the guy that I grew up with down the street. He's still here. Him going home is complicated. What did you think about his whole week as we go forward and what is next for him? And I'm not saying these 2 playoff events, he won't be in Memphis, are not important, but Bethpage, you know that he will be lathered up. What was your thoughts about his week there?
Absolutely. I think, obviously there was a huge narrative coming into the week of what happened in 2019 to Rory at Portrush. And to see him, get over that hump, he's had so much experience since then. I think especially winning the Masters this year, that doesn't solve everything, but that surely gives you a confidence boost when the stakes are so high, performing at home in front of your hometown crowd at a place where you have failed in the past, which is exactly the kind of hump that Rory got over at the Masters. So to see him even contend, with those crowds out there, just being there in person and seeing the packs and packs of people following Rory McIroy every single day of that championship was genuinely stunning. I mean, I just remember following Scottie Scheffler inside the ropes on Saturday, and I believe I was the only member of the print media following him inside the ropes on that Saturday afternoon because everyone was with Rory McIroy. So if anything, I think this tournament for Rory grounded him a bit. He described after winning the Masters that he felt like he had just climbed Mount Everest and it's like, now what? But I think the change of scenery, going back home, spending some time with his family, really put him back in a place where he can just focus on the golf and not the whirlwind of media and responsibilities after winning the Masters. So coming into the Ryder Cup, I think he's in a much better spot than he was earlier this summer.
All right, let's look ahead with both of you. Claire, let me start with you about this 3 weeks ahead. It was actually Gabby who had reporting at the beginning of the year about conversations in terms of potential change to the format of this year's Tour Championship. And they made an alteration in terms of going back to everybody starting at the same position. What does your intuition tell you about what this might look like, I don't know, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, as far as what the playoffs are going to look like, especially under new leadership in Brian Rolap?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm a fan of no more staggered start. I think that'll be good to keep everybody interested all week. And I like that, that'll just be that one winner at the end of the week and they got the bonus out of the way after the end of the regular season. As a fan, I still love the idea of having a match play event, but I understand that, they want it to feel more like a major or a normal tournament for them. So I do think we'll have to see, how the next few weeks go. But I think that this is probably here to stay, if I had to guess.
Gabby, what do you think? It could be intuition, it could be reporting. Again, like I said, the beginning of the year, nobody had the information about these conversations going on between the tour and some of their player leadership. What do you think it's going to look like?
Gary, I think it's definitely to be determined. From what I've heard throughout this whole process, starting in January when we first got wind of the meetings surrounding the Tour Championship format and potentially changing it for this season, there was always this idea that it could be a lofty goal to get things changed in the same season, the same year. And we definitely are seeing that with, what I'm hearing. This could be some sort of transitional year. So, introduce some changes this year, what they can introduce mid-season, and then after the season is over, really reevaluate how we can tweak going forward. But I think the general message was the players really do want this to be a competitively sound finale to the season. And match play is something we all want to see. I mean, I, for one, love watching match play, and I think it's so fun to see head-to-head matchups. But for the finale of the PGA Tour season and really making sure you crown that proper winner, potentially match play isn't the best option for that. And I think that's what the players' voices ultimately said in the meetings, where they went through dozens of scenarios for what this thing could become, and they landed on a 72-hole stroke play format without staggered strokes. We don't have to be confused about that anymore, but really making this more like a major-like test, toughening the setup at East Lake and just making it a really high-stakes golf tournament.
All right, Claire, when Keegan won the Travelers, he was on the team. I'm not saying he's still not going to be on the team, but Goddard has happened. Cam Young has now happened. And Keegan is not necessarily, nor do we expect anybody to just keep, piling up top fives. What do you think the next 3 weeks are going to need to be for him to be a playing captain, which is interesting? There's no doubt it's not more interesting if he tries to do this. Where do you think Keegan sits right now, and what do you think he would have to do for him to do what a lot of people thought a month ago he was definitely doing?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, he's number 10 in the Ryder Cup standings. I think if he stays in the top 12, he will be on the team and pick himself. I think it would take him having to fall out of that, top 12 over the next few weeks to not pick himself. And I think fans would be bummed if that happened.
Gabby, it's interesting. Look, at first it was, if I'm in the 6, then I'll not recuse myself. Like, I won't pick myself, was kind of what the narrative was. Then he won a golf tournament and said, well, now, because I won, and I didn't verbalize this, now I'm going to consider this. And now he's 10th, and Claire's saying, and I'm not saying she's wrong, because I think she's right. If he's in the 12, all of his guys are going to say you're going to play. What do you think's going to happen?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was definitely an internal goal for Keegan Bradley. And he might not have vocalized it because he didn't know if it was going to happen. And winning the Travelers was huge for how he views himself and his ability to compete on that team. But I think it's right. I think as of now, what's probably going on in the U.S. team conversations is, Keegan, if you stay in that top 12, you're playing. We want you on the team. But if there's some movement, if, Cam Young goes and wins a FedEx Cup playoff event, if Chris Goddard goes up there again, there could be some movement in that bottom half of the team. I'm now thinking of guys like Sam Burns and Jordan Spieth. They're basically in the same conversation as a Goddard and Cam Young now. So there's a lot to be determined in these next 3 weeks. For one, I'm starting to think that a Keegan Bradley playing captain situation could be a lot of responsibility for Keegan Bradley. And there was one conversation I actually had during the Open Championship that changed my opinion on this. And it was while I was on BBC Radio for the Open with Katrina Matthew. And she was just describing how high the stakes are during a competition. She was a Solheim Cup captain, and the act of picking your matchups and picking your guys, and it happens while the golf is going on. And I think as fans, we don't always know really what the Ryder Cup captain does in those moments. But to me, if Keegan Bradley became a playing captain, the captain responsibility would really be deferred to someone else. And I think the whole reason they picked Keegan Bradley to captain the U.S. Ryder Cup team was to have that change in leadership, the younger perspective that can really connect with those guys. And he wouldn't necessarily be having that full responsibility anymore if he played.
Yeah, whether it's Katrina Matthew, and I've had, like you, these conversations a lot with captains of European Ryder Cup teams. You had one with the Solheim Cup captain. Just how big the responsibility is. How people saying, well, he'll only play in the afternoon. Well, then you're conceding something already. You're not just looking at him as a player like the other 11. You're looking at him because we've got to manage his time. That's not what it is. It's one or the other. Look, it's interesting. This next 3 weeks is going to be great. All right, give me, Claire, the most underappreciated story in golf in 2025.
I think it's Daniel Berger. He,
Wow.
made the cut at all. Well, we'll start with the injuries that he's had.
Yes.
A lot of people haven't heard his name in years. He played his, way back into signature events this year, top 20 in the Players, made the cut at all 4 majors, and is heading into this week, I think 30th in the FedEx Cup ranking. So he's had a really solid year.
Look, the stories like that, guys who go away, they fall out of your consciousness, and then for them to do what they've done, I think Harris English, even more so in terms of being injured, going away, doing all the work, and what he did in majors, another one. How about you, Gabby? Give me an underappreciated story.
I was thinking about this and it just immediately came to mind. I think it's JJ Spawn. I mean, I was there in that Monday playoff against Rory McIroy, and to see him, airmail the green on the 17th hole at TPC Sawgrass, and then just a few months later come back and win the US Open after shooting 40 on the front nine on Sunday. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was worried about keeping his PGA Tour card at the end of 2024. So I think that I even had to go back and appreciate JJ Spawn a little bit more and what he has accomplished this year. And it really is truly remarkable to have kind of that underdog major winner. We always like to see a star win a major, but a JJ Spawn story is super awesome as well.
And I know you were in the room after the Players when he went in and he was watching on that. Like, he was so good. He was so endearing after that loss on that Monday to Rory. No, he's a terrific story. He's going to be at Bethpage. All right, before we finish here, there are a lot of things about people's careers that you look back on and you go, that was as fun and as rewarding as anything. You guys covered the Open Championship, and then you embarked on a trip together. You're not just peers covering the game, you're genuine friends. We're going to roll in some images, some video. That, of course, is Portrush. Claire on a hell of a run. I mean, where did she not play in 2025? Here she is playing the closing hole. Claire, what was the most nourishing thing about sharing this time with your friend?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, Gabby, you did all the driving, but I think we just kind of chatted for hours and hours and went for walks. And we saw nature. It was great. We had so much fun, a lot of great meals. That's me having my first beer, which
Did you finish that? Did you finish it?
I did.
Wow.
I did. Gabby would not. Yeah.
Gabby, I know you were driving. You definitely drove after she finished her first full beer. How about for you? And by the way, that tee shot on 18 at Portrush, very spicy club twirl at the conclusion of that. My gosh, what a show off.
Well, Gary, that might have been the only solid shot that I hit all day at Final Portrush, so I was pretty excited about that one. But I mean, traveling with Claire was a joy. I mean, everyone knows this from just her social media, but like the way that she can joke about things and make light of what we all take way too seriously in professional golf is truly admirable. And to have her on the road while I was trying to figure out how to drive on the left side was amazing. I don't think I could have done it without her. I called her my co-pilot all week. And it was so special. I mean, Gary, this won't come as a surprise to many people, but there are many times on the road where Claire and I are one of the few women in those spaces out there in the media center and the press conference room, and to have someone who not only is a close colleague and peer, but a friend is so amazing. And I'm just grateful that Claire and I met a few years ago.
I appreciate both of you for the work you do, but for the choice you made to spend the quality time together after doing the work you did at the Open. We will be doing this again. Thank you both very much. We got to run to a break real quick. Gabby Herzig, Claire Rogers, they're great at what they do. We're back here to wrap it up on a Monday on 5 Clubs right after this. Welcome back in. A reminder, tomorrow, Johnson Wagner, Brendan DeYoung with me. Whole show for Wagyu and filet. That's a lot of steak on a Tuesday morning, but it's good. It's protein. This segment brought to you by Pinehurst, the cradle of American golf. They have so much to give to you, whether it's on course or off. Book your trip to the Pinehurst Resort to play. One of 10, not to mention the cradle and all the great other stuff that they've got for you. All right, let's take a look quickly, though, as we wrap it up here on this Monday, the bubble. And the guy who started the week as the bubble boy, Matty Schmid, ended the week as the bubble boy. And you can say, well, you know, what a ho-hum week for him. Really? He had to birdie the last 3 holes yesterday to hold on to that position. I was told he drank a case of Yoo-Hoo last night as the bubble boy. He heads now to Memphis as number 7. He's going to need an outrageously good week to see beyond that. Chris Kirk, I mentioned him. He's another excellent story as well. Mac Meisner, no, he's not in the FedEx Cup playoffs, but the guy was 159th before the 3M in the FedEx Cup standings. Now he's fully employed. Somebody who's employed still as an elite athlete and has been part of the public consciousness for almost a quarter century is LeBron James. You know what he loves now, apparently? Of course, golf. Now, that is very golfy right there. The pitter-pat of your feet, that's a sign of a mild discomfort or maybe just settling in. He needs an instructor, but that's okay. What he also needs is, let's not do that. Let's pull the flagstick out. With all due respect to Charlie Hull and Adam Scott and Matthew Fitzpatrick, by the way, that deprived Adam Scott of a closing birdie yesterday. But that's the image right there that I love most. I'm sitting in this chair because of my days playing golf with my dad when I was growing up, but that was him playing golf with Bronny. Just add him to the list. How much more popular can the game of golf get? As I mentioned, Johnson Wagner, Brendan Young, contributors to us here on 5 Clubs, will be with me for the entire program tomorrow. A lot of amateur golf. Oh, by the way, I mentioned everything about 5 Clubs starting the show. Apparently, I didn't mention Kerrigan, Julia, and James. My gosh, how fragile are their egos? I mentioned everybody who's part of this team. Not everybody. Have a great rest of your Monday. Some steak for breakfast on a Tuesday and a lot of amateur golf on Wednesday. See you tomorrow.